Let me check this out.
How's that looking?
Oh, it's a little low. Hi, and welcome to Hometime. We're leveling out an area for a deck that we're going to build here. You can see that we've already got the ledger board up, but we're not quite ready for that. We've got a couple of other things on the project list that come before it.
Now, this house was built last year, finished up about in the fall. Too late to get all the landscaping in. Now that it's summer, we're going to turn this barren wasteland of dirt into a beautiful backyard with some useful living spaces. In fact, that's going to be the focus of our next few shows.
So in this show, we'll build retaining walls, do soil prep, and lay down some sod. All the things that we need to do before building a deck. Barren wasteland of dirt. That's a little harsh, isn't it?
Hometime is made possible by Chevy Truck, who brings you Chevy full-size pickups, today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S-Series pickups, today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy's Astro all-wheel drive, today's mid-size van with standard four-wheel anti-lock brakes. Chevy trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. The National Hometime PBS series is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.
On the next show, we're going to be building a deck off the back of the house. It'll come out about 20 feet, land us out about here. So what we're doing right now is just tweaking the grade. We don't want to get it so level that water stands here, or worse yet, backs into the house. We're just kind of working the grade around the whole home. We'll plant some shrubs and trees, and then we'll be all set for sod. But I'm going to fill this up around by the garage.
Okay. I'm going to get a quick soil sample and finish smoothing this out.
Okay. Well, from the garage to the corner of the house, it drops about 3 feet. So we're going to put a retaining wall in this area to create kind of a terraced effect. It'll give us a flat area up here for a planting bed. Now, we have the same type of situation on the other side of the house, so we'll put a retaining wall over there as well, although that one will be a little bit smaller. Now over here, we ran into a little bit of a settling problem, which is something many times you'll see the first year of a house, especially in heavier soils, because they tend to clump up a little bit when you backfill. So we just roll back the mulch and plastic, we'll throw in a little bit of fill, and then just roll everything back again.
I'm using a laser level to check the grade on the whole yard. Now, these are available in some rental centers, and they cost just about as much to rent as a transit. In fact, I think they're easier to use than a transit because it doesn't take two people to take a reading. Now, this particular one works up to 50 feet in all directions, which brings up a good point. You always need to consider safety when working with lasers. Never look directly into them. Warn your neighbors that you're using it. Tell children not to look into them, or just keep them out of the area altogether. And shut it off when you're not using it. I've leveled it using these bubble levels on the side. It shoots a laser beam out of this top as it spins and gives you a 360-degree level line of reference. Now, if you were using this inside, you'd be able to see the line as it travels around the room. But because of the bright outdoor light, you need a sensor like this to pick up the beam. And it beeps like that. And this display will show you when you're close and when you're right on. Now, if you move the sensor up and down this grade stick, it'll give you the height where the beam hits it. For example, this is going to be, 1 7/10. The grade stick is marked in tenths, not inches. Let's go a little closer to the house here and see where this falls. And that's going to be, that's going to be 1, which is 7/10 lower, but the grade is actually higher. So it kind of makes you think a little bit. Now, as you move this stick around the yard, it gives you an idea of what the grade is doing, what spots are high and what spots are low.
Now, probably the best way to ensure that you don't have a wet basement is to make sure that you have plenty of grade coming away from the side of the house. In fact, I think it's code in some areas to have 1-inch drop for every foot for the first 6 feet coming out. I don't need the laser level to calculate something like this. All I need is a 2x4, a level, and measuring tape. Put the 2x4 up against the house, get a good level position. If you're working with a 6-foot 2x4 like we're working here, you should have at least 6 inches of exposure here on the very end. Well, here in the front yard, the sod's been down since last fall. But this area where the water comes out of the downspouts is a little flat. So we're cutting in a swale, which is basically a shallow trench. This way, when the water comes out of the downspout, it'll travel across the front yard and out to the side where it drops off.
To do this, we rolled the sod up the length of the swale, and then we cut sort of a shallow V into the soil, making sure that we have about 3/4 of an inch or so of drop for every foot. How's it look?
That's a little high right here.
Okay.
You could just take that spot down. Now, if you plan on doing any digging, be sure and play it safe. Have all the underground utilities marked. Now, most utility companies or the state will have an 800 number that you can call up, and usually within a 48-hour period of time, they'll come out and either spray paint the locations or they'll mark them with flags.
Now, once we lay the sod back in, you'll barely be able to see that it's there because the sides will slope so gently. That way you can run a mower over it without gouging the lawn.
Now, of course, you don't have to use a laser level like this to do this type of job. It's the most accurate way. You could also do a 2x4 in a level like I showed you before. Okay, I think we're all set to do this, Rob.
All right.
It's looking pretty good.
This piece. Let's see, water, soda, iced tea?
Oh, water be good, thanks. See, what would you think about some perennials along the woods?
I like that idea.
Well, we haven't exactly jumped into this process. We have spent a little time on the plan. Now, the plan is fairly straightforward, but it does incorporate some basic design landscape principles. Now, the first thing you want to do in a design is a site evaluation. This involves taking some notes on your site's current conditions. See how much sun each part of the yard gets throughout the day. Also, measure off the locations of existing features, like trees, sidewalks, and driveways, and determine what areas need privacy or noise screenings.
With this information, you can put together what's called a bubble plan. Do you have that over there?
Yeah, there you go.
Now, it's basically a simplified plan with colored circles to get you to focus on different functions of the landscape. Now, for instance, we've designated areas for the lawn, let's see, privacy screening over here, planting beds, and so on.
Well, with the basic concepts in order, now you're ready to do the master plan. Now, this is where you want to detail everything. Locate trees exactly where you plan on planting them. Specify the type of tree that they'll be. Locate all your shrubs, your planting beds. Also, this is where you want to locate all the hard structures like the deck, retaining walls in their appropriate spots. If you plan on adding a fence, draw those in. And this whole plan has been done in an 1/8 inch scale, which is something that is real standard for a landscape plan.
Now, if you're having trouble visualizing what your plan is going to look like, here's one idea. Take an enlarged photo of the house and some tracing paper and sketch the way that your home might look 10 or 20 years down the road after all the trees and shrubs have grown.
Now, obviously, landscaping can get to be a little spendy. That's why you want to come up with a total plan, take a look at what the budget for that entire plan will cost, and then determine how much time and energy you want to put into it currently, and what portions of this plan you'll just leave until time and energy allow later on.
By having a solid plan up front, you won't waste money having to redo stuff because you didn't plan far enough ahead. In fact, after thinking about it, we changed our minds about when to lay the sod because we just realized we were going to end up trashing it while building the deck and installing the walkways, and then we just end up spending more money later on.
You know, I forgot to call up the sod guy and cancel that thing.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be... Okay, I'm all set here.
Let's do this one pretty much.
Okay. Well, we decided to warm up with the smaller wall and leave the larger one for later. Now, the top of this one is going to go up to the skirting, curve around here, and then gradually die out in the hill.
Now, we're working with a medium-sized block. These are about 77 pounds apiece, and they can do a gravity wall up to about 4 feet. Now, we're working with an angled split face is what they call it. The way they do this is they originally form a block this size, and they split it in half and then split off the two sides, and it gives us a real natural stone-looking kind of a curved face. Now, if you want to do a wall that's taller than 4 feet, then you'll have to go with a block that's a little bit deeper. The next size runs about 100 pounds, which gets to be a little heavy for most do-it-yourselfers.
One of the most important things, if not the most important thing in building a wall, is that everything is level, especially the first course. If you're off just a little bit here, it's just going to get worse as you go up. So it's very important to have a firm foundation. First, we dug a trench deep enough so there'd be room for a 4-inch layer of base material and part of the first course of block. Then we used sand for the base. Now, sand works well because it settles very little and it lets water drain through it. We used a hand tamper to pack the sand and made sure it was level. Then, starting at the house, we carefully laid each block and also checked those for level. Once the first course was in, we backfilled it with sand and topsoil to lock it in place. Now, the first course of block dies into the hill here, and then the trench for the second course starts here and dies into the hill back here. And then each course goes up like that as it goes back. Now, the trench is deep enough so that the top of the sand is level with the top of the course below it.
Now, many installers will knock the flanges off the back of the block. It makes it a lot easier to level. But by leaving those flanges on there, it gives the block a little bit something to kind of dig into the hillside. Now, the trick is to get that flange sink into the sand, and once you get that in there, then you just go ahead and level everything off. Okay, that's pretty good right there.
We're backfilling this whole wall with sand, which will allow any water that built up in the soil behind the wall to pass through and drain out the front. In organic or clay soils, water pressure can build up and blow out the wall. Unfortunately, sometimes the sand can seep out too. That's why we're putting this landscape fabric up against the back of the wall, which will allow water to pass through, but not the sand. Grab that over there.
This down over here. All right, let me get a little sand
here.
Right in the middle.
Okay. That's good.
There.
All right, I can take this over.
Okay, all right, there you go.
Thanks. Well, we've worked our way up to the last course. Now, at this point, you may need to trim the landscape fabric so that it's a couple of inches over the block on this course. And then the last row will go on top of that and hold it in place. Now, most retaining walls are built on a running bond pattern where the blocks on one row are centered over the joint of the row below it. That way, you've got half a block up against the house every other row. These are the ones that need to be split. And you do that by scoring the top, bottom, and face along the cut line. We used a circular saw and a carborundum blade, but you could use a mason's chisel and a fist maul. Once you've scored it, you should be able to split it with a chisel by giving it a good hard blow on the back side. Now, this may take a while, but it usually does break fairly clean. Looks like we're going to need 7 more.
Okay. Unfortunately, we ran out of blocks. We're going to pick up some more, finish this off today, and then tomorrow we'll start on the wall on the other side of the house. You want to grab the block, and I'll finish tamping this down while you're gone?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. We've gotten a pretty good start on the second wall. We're using smaller blocks here. They're 4 inches high and only 27 pounds, so they're so much easier to handle. Now, we're able to use smaller blocks here because this wall is going to max out at 3 feet.
Well, this is a concrete form for the footing for our deck. The corner of the deck lands right here, and we thought we would put this in now, get it taken care of, rather than digging all this up once we had the wall done. But anyway, our wall splits apart right here. This is the final height of this wall. We'll have a little planting bed in the middle, and then this wall will be at the same height we have over there. And then as we come around the edge here, there will be a stairway that comes up along here to access our service door.
Well, there comes a time in landscaping when you have to determine what you can do yourself and what's best left to someone with large equipment. Now, if you're going to be moving more than just a few cubic yards of earth, then it's probably best to call an excavator. So before we started this one, we had a bobcat come in and take care of some of the heavy work. He was able to rough out the trenches for us so there'd be less shovel work to do, haul in the sand for the backfill, and bring the blocks up close to where we'd be working. That's going to save us a tremendous amount of energy. Now, you could rent a bobcat and do it yourself, but be careful. It'll cost quite a bit per hour, and if you're not familiar with it, you could spend more money and time learning how to do it than you would if you'd hired somebody to do it.
Now, one thing you might want to consider, if you have a lot of water runoff behind the wall, you might want to consider installing drain tile along the bottom of the first course. Now, in our situation, we won't be doing that because the only water runoff we have is the water that lands here because of the pitch of the roof. But if we had a big valley coming down here in the middle with a lot of water draining there, we probably would install drain tile.
Well, we've gotten quite a bit done. In fact, we're on the last area, and these will be the steps. And basically, they're just an extension of the wall. The bottom wall wraps around and forms that bottom step. The top wall swings around, forms this little planting area, comes back and forms the top step. And then this middle step just kind of dives into the wall. Now, each of these starts as a trench with a sand base. Now, it's not necessary to glue cap blocks down on residential walls. That's why we're just setting them in place. But we are gluing the cap blocks down for our stairs. That way, when we walk on them, they're not going to move around on us. Now, this adhesive is specially designed for this purpose. It bonds really well just as long as the blocks are completely dry.
Our top two courses of block are a little different. They're hollow blocks we filled with topsoil. This way we create a couple of rows of planters for annuals, perennials, or really anything you'd want to put there. Now, there's a rule of thumb on how you structure these multi-level walls. And it goes like this. The distance between the two walls should be at least twice the height of the wall in front of it. So in our case, this wall is about 1 foot high, so between here we have at least 2 feet.
We laid landscape fabric down in between the blocks to keep the weeds out, and we're backfilling with the same gray trap rock as along the side of the house to blend that in. And that'll be even with the top of the steps to finish that off. Now, each step is 3 blocks high, but only 2 are exposed, which gives us our 8-inch rise for each step.
Now, in terms of cost of material, block like this run about $5 to $8 a square foot. Timbers and boulders will run about $7 a square foot. So figure this wall is about 127 square feet. It'll run anywhere from $635 to $1,000 for the block itself. Now, that doesn't include the backfill and the base material.
I'm going to need some more sand in here before I can lay this down.
Okay, let me just get a couple more. While we're waiting for the city to okay our plan for the deck, we thought we'd move ahead by planting some trees and shrubs. Now, Robin's at the nursery getting the first load. I stayed behind to start digging a few holes. Now, just as a reminder, make sure that you have your utilities marked. We have a phone line running right along here. I have to be real careful as I dig out this hole. Now, most trees need good drainage. This soil isn't too bad. It could be a little on the heavy side, but there's a way to test for this. Now, what you do is pour water into the hole. If the water drains out right away, then you probably should add some compost or peat moss just to hold moisture up against the roots. On the other hand, if you pour water in there and it sits for several hours, you probably should add some loose material like sand or a rock just so that the water doesn't rest up against the roots and rot the plant. Yeah, come on back just a little bit further. That's good right there. How'd it go?
Good.
See, I'm ready for the birch tree. Know where that's at?
Yeah, it's on that side.
This side?
Over there.
Okay.
Well, it looks like everything made it all right. Well, transporting trees is not always easy. You have to be very careful so that nothing sustains any wind damage. And the best bet is to transport them covered like in a van or a truck. But if you can't do that, make sure to wrap the foliage so it doesn't blow around so much.
Well, the directions say the hole should be 8 inches larger than the root ball. You can make it larger, but you definitely don't want it any smaller. Now, you also don't want the hole to be too deep. You want the top of the root ball to be even with the rest of the grade. If it gets to be too deep, and then when you add that fill, when everything settles, it could pull the tree too deeply into the hole. Now, it's also not a bad idea to score the side of the hole with either a shovel or a pick. This way, that especially in heavier soils, otherwise, when you get the root ball in, the roots will have a tendency to just circle the root ball rather than spreading out.
When buying trees and shrubs, buy from a reputable nursery so you know you're getting good stock. Some things to look for: a healthy appearance with green foliage, except for, of course, in the fall. Sometimes yellow foliage and a shabby appearance mean lack of care or fertilization. Also, check for any insect or disease damage. Make sure it's hardy for your zone and that it comes with a good guarantee. Now at the nursery, you can pull the plant partway out of the pot to check the roots. Now if you see mostly roots and very little dirt, it means that the plant is root bound and that it's outgrowing its pot. I checked these out and they look very healthy.
Now once you have the hole dug, then you want to score the root ball. Now, you don't want to disturb it. You just want to score it in a few spots. This will help promote root growth once it's in the ground. Okay, let's get that thing in the ground very carefully. Okay, with that in the hole, I can start to backfill. Now, I picked up some compost from our local compost facility. This is where all your grass clippings and leaves end up going. Now, I'm going to mix this in a 1-to-3 ratio. 1 shovel of the compost every 3 shovelfuls of soil from the yard. Now this will make a nice medium for root growth and add some nutrients to the soil, along with the benefits I mentioned earlier concerning drainage. I'm only going to fill this up about halfway.
You done with the compost? I'm ready to backfill mine.
Let me just grab one more shovelful. You can have it. There you go. Thanks. Well, once we reach the halfway point, then we want to add some water. This will help settle the backfill, and using a spray nozzle works real well for this. All right, I've got mulch.
Okay, well, these 2 trees are watered.
Okay.
Well, we've moved on to the backyard plantings. We've got a maple, some American cranberries, and some sumac, which will fill in this corner nicely and give us a good screening for the backyard. It'll also make a nice transition between the woods and the sod we're going to put in back here.
Now we built up a little dike along the tree. This is, of course, so that when we water it, the water will hold in here a little bit to get down to the roots. Now we're going to fill this area with wood mulch. That helps keep the temperature of the root ball down just a little bit, plus it helps retain moisture a little bit better. I would recommend the wood mulch over stone because the stone or rock mulch has a tendency to heat up a little bit, plus it doesn't retain moisture nearly as well.
Watering is very critical to newly planted trees and shrubs. During the first week, give them as much water as they'll take. After that, water them extensively to promote root growth, but then let them dry out in between waterings, otherwise the roots will rot.
Yeah, watch out for the boards here.
All right.
Well, why don't we throw these up on the sawhorses till we get the ladder situated, all right?
Sounds good.
There we go. Now the deck we're building will be coming off this ledge board already attached to the house. It's a multi-level deck. We have one level coming off the kitchen and then a lower level a little bit further out into the yard. It wraps around the side of the house at the corner, but will go on this footing. Now the stairway comes down in this area. It travels down onto a landing that will be sitting right about here, and then the rest of the stairway comes down and lands right about here toward this retaining wall.
You might be able to see it easier on the plan. Now this is the decking layout. You can see the upper deck here, the lower deck, the stairways, and our landing. Now they also included a footing placement plan which we use to lay out our footings. And here's the back of the house, and this is the side. The plan uses reference lines coming off of each one, and measurements for post placement come off of those as well as off the siding on the house. So we set up string lines to represent the reference lines on the plan, squared them up using the 3-4-5 method, and measured for our posts off of those. The center of each footing was marked with a flag.
Our deck has a total of 13 footings. 9 of these have to be 21 inches diameter. And the reason for that is because since the last time we did one of these, the codes have changed a little bit. Last time we only had to make them 12 inches in diameter and then flare them out 16 inches on the bottom. Of course, we're in a northern climate, so they have to go down 42 inches in the ground to clear the frost line. So it doesn't take a whole lot of work to figure out the math to realize you're going to have to rent some type of power auger. So yesterday, we had a contractor bring in a large auger, and the money we spent for that was well worth it. They were inspected later in the day, and then this morning, The concrete truck arrived. With a little extra help, we poured the footings. Each one had to be 12 inches thick, and that worked out to be about 2 wheelbarrows each. Well, that's where we're at right now. We've been working on the ledge board a little bit. Part of this was already installed when the house was built. Typically, builders will just tack this in place, caulk it, flash it, make sure that no moisture is getting in the house. Now, this will not support a deck. What you have to do typically is bolt these into the structure, and that's what we'll be doing.
Well, in past projects, we've always had a rim joist to bolt into. But this house has a truss system of 2x4s to secure to instead. We put 2x10 blocking in between the struts of the last truss because the narrowest part of the 2x4 faces out, and that's a really hard target to hit when you're drilling from the outside. Toe-nailing the blocking in at the same level as the ledger board gives us plenty to secure to. I was able to tell where the ends of the trusses were by these nails. Now, the builder had to nail the ledger boards into the ends of the trusses too, so I just lined it up with those. Except for this angle here where there's some more of that blocking on the inside. Now, the plan calls for our carriage bolts to be installed 2.5 inches down from the top, up from the bottom, and centered on each truss.
Now, these are the carriage bolts that we're using to attach the ledger board to the wall. Another option you have is to use a lag screw like this. The problem with this is you can't attach a nut on the end, whereas with a carriage bolt you can do that. Of course, this is assuming that you have an unfinished ceiling. It's the only way you can get it the other side of the wall. But with a carriage bolt and nut on the end, you have a much stronger connection. Well, we already cut out the vinyl siding for this ledge board, but we're not going to put that up until we come around the corner and start framing up that portion of the deck. Robin, could I borrow the caulk?
Oh, yeah.
Put in here.
There you go.
Ah, thanks.
Well, now that we know how these are timing out, why don't I go put those other hangers on?
Okay, sounds good. Well, we have our ledger board secure now, so we moved on to the joist hangers. Now, we're spacing these 16 inches on center, which is standard, except for the first one. This is only over 13 inches on center, and that's because we wanted to move everything over a little bit so we're not laying them right on top of our carriage bolts. I ran my tape measure past our ledger 1.5 inches to make up for the rim joist that will go right here. Now, if I measure from there over 12.25 inches, that gives me the edge of the first joist, which will put that joist 13 inches on center. Now, by measuring from the edge of the first joist, 16 inches, it will place the rest of the joist 16 inches on center. Now, once we hit the bump out, I take the framing square, place it on the ledger board up against the last mark, and then measure over 16 inches at a 90-degree angle to the framing square until I hit the ledger board, and then I made a mark there. That's the position of our next joist. For the joist position after this, I measure out 32 inches at a 90-degree angle from the framing square, and we ended up in a position slightly past the bump out, and we made a mark there as well. And from this point, we just continue as we've been doing up here. You ready for this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there you
Thanks.
go. Now, for the joist hangers around the other side of the bump out, we're going to let those go until we get this portion of the deck constructed. Then they'll be a lot easier to locate.
It's much nicer working on the ground than it is up on those ladders. If that ledger board hadn't been up there, we would have put the joist hangers on before we put it up there. Anyway, this is the header joist, which will support the deck joist coming off of the ledger. So we use the same layout measurements down here that we did up there. The only difference is that this one will butt up against the two outside rim joists. I ran my tape measure 3 inches past the edge to compensate for both rim joists and made my first mark at 12.25 inches, which represents the edge of the first joist. Then I put my tape measure on that mark and measured down every 16 inches, just like we did up there. Now, the smaller side of the square is the same thickness as 2x lumber, so I can just use that to mark both sides of the joist before I put the hangers on.
All right, now the way we position our joist hangers is we take a scrap of the joist that we're going to be working with, we position it on the ledger board where it goes right up against the pencil line and flush with the top, and we take the joist hanger and we just fold it around the joist. Once we have it nice and tight, we tack it in position on the right and left-hand sides. Around over there. There we go. And once the joist hanger is tacked in position, we can haul this out and then nail it down. Now, the types of nails that we're using are galvanized joist hanger nails. They're specifically designed for this task because they have real good shear strength. I suppose this will about wrap it up for today, don't you think?
Yeah, we should be able to start framing this tomorrow.
You butt all set there?
Just one more. Okay. Well, we're just about ready to frame the upper deck now. I bet you're wondering how in the world we're going to do that without any posts. Well, we're using a different technique that a lot of deck builders are using now. We're framing the deck using temporary posts. And then we get everything where we want it, and we put the permanent posts in. Now, the way we used to do it in the past is we set up the string lines, lined up the plinth blocks for the posts according to those, set the posts in place, plumb them and determine their height with a board and a level, took them back down and cut them, then we set them back up and braced them in place.
Okay, up just a little bit, Robin.
Okay? Now that way worked fine, except for that you spent all that time figuring out where the posts would go, and there's still a little bit of chance that you're going to be off. This way seems to be a little smaller margin of error.
Okay, that's pretty good right there. Now hold it. Okay, you got it there, Robin?
Got it.
All right.
We screwed a temporary cleat into the ledger board so that it helps hold this rim joist up until Dean was able to secure it.
Okay, bear with me.
All right.
I'm coming up. If you can hold that there,
Okay.
I'll get the level up.
All right. You know how we're doing on that. Up a little more?
Pretty good right there. Okay. Hold it
All
right there.
Got it.
Okay, I've got this if you want to grab the braces.
Okay.
Here, can you grab this one?
Oh, sure. Well, we're bracing it up using a 2x4, and then we'll stake it. That should hold everything in place until we can get the frame boxed in and the permanent posts up. Right there.
Okay, right about there. It's good. Back it up just a little bit.
Okay. How's that?
Yep.
What's that for?
Oh, I'm just going to screw this on here so we have something to rest the header on.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, the second joist and bracing went up the same as the first, only it's shorter to allow for the bump out. Now we're ready to put this header joist up.
On one side of the header joist will rest right here and we'll end nail into it. In fact, we have our nails in place already. Now I screwed this little piece here so we have something to rest our header on while we do the end nailing.
All right, now the joist on this side is going to slip into this hanger, and then it's going to get end nailed from the outside. That's what I started these nails for.
You want to take this in? I'll grab this side.
Sure. Then we screwed these cleats on for a beam that's going to go up later on. All right, ready?
Yep.
Okay. Get this around. Grab it. Okay, once I get up here, I'll set it on top. Okay. All right, it's on the cleat.
Right there?
Yep.
Okay. Now our header joist runs past this joist by one joist length. And the reason for that is that once we get this nailed into position and the deck squared up, then we can run our next joist parallel to this one, and we'll know exactly where it should land on the bump out. Okay, here we go, last one.
All right, slide her on down. Okay.
Oh, just a second, we have to get crown side up.
Oh, here we go.
Turn it around.
Okay, it's in here. Now the joists get toe-nailed into the ledger first to bring them up tight against it, and then we'll end nail them to hold them in place. And we're not going to secure them to the joist hangers until after we get the header straightened out, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, I'm all set. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay, I need one 82 7/8 on the short side.
82 7/8, all right.
Well, the deck has been squared now, so we can go ahead and put this last joist in. Now, the best way to square a deck is to measure corner to corner on the diagonals. If the measurements are equal, then the deck is square. But you can only do that with a perfect square or rectangle, which this isn't because of the bump out. So, the 6, 8, 10 method worked out well for us. To do this, we started at a corner and measured out 6 feet one way and marked it. And 8 feet in the other direction, marked that.
Send that over here.
Now, the distance between the marks should be 10 feet.
That's on the 10-foot mark.
It was a little bit off, so we adjusted the framing until it was at 10 feet. Then, to keep it from moving on us, we screwed a diagonal board across the framing underneath to hold it in place.
Okay, this one's all set to go in.
All right?
I'm gonna grab
Bring
this.
it on over.
Pick up the ladder.
Okay.
Oops, it's hung up on my...
Think it'll work on the first try?
Yeah, I think. We'll see. We'll know very soon here.
Oop. Right
Right
there.
How about right there? There you go.
Okay, I can handle it from here.
Okay. Cut that first 2x10.
All right.
Well, we got enough framing done yesterday, so today we can start setting the permanent posts. But first, we have to get our beam up. Let me show you where we're at. Now, we've already framed up the upper deck. We have this 2x spacer underneath it. What I'm doing now is cutting the 2x10s that will form the beam that will support the upper deck. Now, this beam will also form the header joist for our lower deck. And we end up with a 14-inch space between the two decks, but we'll simply add a step to break up the difference. Okay, Robin, this one's all set.
All right.
I'll hand it up to you. Okay, I'll get this end. Okay, you got that?
Got it?
Let me get this over my head. Okay, so I can carry it up this way. Now what we're going to do is just temporarily screw this into position, and then once we have the posts up here, then we'll toenail it into the bottom of the beam. Okay.
Let her down.
Okay. We just about there?
Yeah, it's got to get in that middle cleat.
Okay. Now I think we're just about there. Let me. Okay.
You there?
Just a little bit.
How's that?
Back just a bit. Okay, right there. Let's tap it in. Oh, we moved ahead. We've done a couple of, put a couple posts in place. Now we're using 6x6s to support the weight of the deck. Now to determine the height of these, we measure down from the bottom of the beam to the top of the footing. We transfer that to the post. It takes 4 passes with a circular saw to get through these, and then to polish off the cut, I'm using a handsaw. So I get my mask back on here again.
Now, the treatment process only goes so deep. Cutting the wood exposes the untreated interior. So it's recommended to end treat any surfaces that are going to be horizontal where water can sit. You should use a wood preservative with at least 2% copper or copper naphthenate as an active ingredient.
Now to make the connection of the post to the beam, we're using these metal connectors. And we place the first one along the back side of the post, and we nail these in using joist hanger nails. And then we have the other side that will go in here on the other side of the 3 2x10s.
Whenever possible, they recommend that you wear gloves whenever you're handling treated lumber. And also wear a dust mask when you're cutting it, because you don't want to be breathing that sawdust.
Okay, one more here and we can lift it up. You want to grab the end down there?
All right.
I'll take it right in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Spin this
Around
around.
it.
Okay, go ahead and put it down in there.
Be careful of it.
Yeah, just let it drop, Robin. That's good.
Okay. Oh, it needs to get in the middle. Just come over a little bit. Okay. Get it on here, up under. All right. Good here.
Okay, let me just get
Bring it
down a
down.
ways.
That's good right
Okay,
there.
that's it.
Well, we've already got the joist hangers on this one and the opposite header. And it's just easier to put them on both at the same time if you can. And what we did is we laid the headers out next to each other on the sawhorses and marked the location of the joists 16 inches on center. Then with a carpenter square, we transferred that mark across both boards. The hangers were laid out to mirror each other, and then we nailed them in place just like the others. Now the last step is to nail these 3 2x10s together. We put a nail in every couple of feet along the front and the back and then move on.
Well, the lower deck is going together basically the same as the upper deck. The main difference is we only have 2 2x10s for our beam up in front rather than the 3 2x10s we had on the upper deck. And those 2x10s are going to fit together in this little notch that we've cut at the end of our post.
Now to find the height of the post, we measured from the beam to the footing just like we did on the others. And then I used that measurement to find the bottom of the notch and transfer that onto the post. And then also I'm going to go up 8 1/4 inches, which represents the top of the post. And I go ahead and make those lines. Go. And for the top of the post, I can go ahead and transfer that line to the sides. That side, that side. But on this one, the bottom of the notch, I'm only going to go down 3 inches, which represents the depth of the notch and the depth of the beam. Okay, do the same thing on this side. 3 inches. And make another mark, 3 inches. Then I use the carpenter square to connect the dots, and I do the same thing then on the other side.
Our main beam will get bolted to this post using lag screws. That's why I've done the pre-drilling first. So now I can apply preservative on the end cut, and then we can position the post. Okay, ready for this one?
Yep.
We're just going to toenail it for now, and then once we get the last couple of joists in and this thing backfilled, then we'll attach it with our carriage or our lag screws.
Okay, I'm going to get the, you got it?
That's good, right
I'm
there.
going to get the level. And we left a couple of joists out. Because of the layout, we won't be able to put those in until after the posts are in. Okay, ready? We're going to have to get this in.
It's right on the line here, so. Well, we decided to put the decking on first to stiffen everything up, and then we'll come back and build the stairway. So for the time being, we'll have to be running up and down ladders for a while, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's really the best way to do it. Okay, there you go.
Okay, I got it. With a diagonal decking pattern, you end up with 45-degree cuts on each end. Now, the best way to do that is to cut the 45 for the side that goes up against the house with a speed square as a cutting guide. Now, you don't have to worry about cutting them to length yet. You can do like we did and just run them long over the edge of the deck and cut them all off at once later on.
Okay, ready for another one?
Yeah.
All right, let's get this thing down here. Now, when you're laying out these deck boards, let me get underneath the cord, you want to keep a little bit of a space in between each board so that the rain can get through and drain. Now, what works real well to use are 16-penny nails. You just kind of tack down onto the joist and then push the board up against them. This will give us about an 1/8 inch gap, which is real good.
We're using 2.5-inch galvanized deck screws to secure them. Now, you may want to pre-drill. That'll cut down on the number of stripped or broken screws if that's a problem. You also want to pre-drill if you're within 1 inch to 1.5 inches from the end of the board to keep that from splitting. Dean, you want to give me a hand with this?
Oh, sure.
Pull that in. Oops, I'll get started here. Yeah.
Now, when you're installing these deck boards at a diagonal, you need something to attach them to at or near the end. Of course, around the outside we have our rim joist, but up against the house here, we don't want to screw through the ledge board because we could pierce the flashing. So instead we install this solid blocking with enough space between the ledger board and the blocking so water can get between. This way we have our attachment. Now to get this pattern started so it's a perfect 45, we first measured out from the house to the corner of the deck and measured that same distance from the corner along the header joist and marked it. And then we snapped a chalk line between those marks and then lined the first board up to that. Well, we've got down most of the decking on this upper section. Well, we ran into probably one of the more interesting cuts we've seen in a while. Well, the angle of our deck boards didn't match up the angle of the bump out very well. So once we had this notch determined, I measured the distance from this point down to here, took this measurement, went from here down to 0 to end up with that angle.
Now the next thing we want to do is cut the ends off these boards, and to do that we're going to snap a chalk line. Now we want the ends to be flush with the rim joist, so we take a framing square and run it through the boards on the corner and make a mark. That'll show me where the rim joist is. Okay.
Okay, you want to grab that one?
Yep.
Hold out. Okay, tell me when you're on your mark.
On the mark.
Okay, I'm going to snap it.
Okay.
There we go.
Go ahead with that. I'll get ready here. Okay. And then just cut right along that line.
Now, as we come around the corner here, we're maintaining the same 45-degree angle. One thing is it's been a while since we established it on the other side of the deck. And as we come around the corner here, that 45-degree angle could start to drift a little bit. So to double check it, we reestablished our 45-degree angle up here. We snapped a chalk line. We measured over from that. We just tacked this board in. We're using that as a reference point. We measured down here and up here to make sure these are running parallel. And as it turned out, it's about an 1/8 inch wider up here. So we're just going to adjust the next couple of boards going in, adjust the gaps a little bit. Once we get here, we'll be right back on track again.
Well, we're using 2x6s specifically for this purpose. And it's made only from high-grade lumber, so you get a better-looking material. It's also specially treated with a water repellent. Now, normally lumber is treated with just a wood preservative to protect it against insects and decay, but not water damage. You'd have to brush that on yourself. But this already has it in it. It's embedded right in the wood.
Well, once we get this decking down up here, we can move on to the lower deck. Now, it's also going to be at a 45-degree angle, but that's running in the opposite direction. See, once I get this thing screwed down, I might as well start loading up some more boards.
Okay, I've just got this one last cut to make.
Okay.
A few more joist fingernails.
Yeah, I got a few here.
Thanks. Well, we're done with the deck boards, and we're just about ready to tackle the stairway. Now, the stairs are going to come off the deck here, and are going to hit the landing about where the footings are, turn around, and go back toward the house. And we've got our stringer beam up here to give us something to attach the stair stringer to.
Well, the stairs is probably one of the tougher things to build on a deck. The one we're doing has a couple of interesting aspects to it. Well, for one thing, our landing has a step in it. You don't see this real often. Now, the way we'll frame this up is to first frame up the bottom part of the landing and then frame up this upper part to create our step. Another thing a little unique about this landing is it doesn't attach anywhere to the deck at all. The only attachment is right here at the stairway. So our only reference point really is looking over here at a couple of posts or, of course, a stringer coming down from our upper deck. Now, the trick to this is getting the landing in the exact position at the right height so everything works out in relation to rise and run according to the plan. It also has to be perfectly square to the deck. There's a lot of different ways of handling this. The way we're going to do it is we're going to start at the top of the deck and work our way down, using the top of the deck as a reference point. And for this, we'll be using the stringers. Now we have one for each side and one in the center. Now to lay out your stringer, you first have to know the rise and run. Now according to our plan, the rise is 7 inches and the run is 12 1/8 inches. So starting at one end of the board and working our way down, we use a framing square, slide it up against the edge, so one side of the framing square is at 7 and the other is at 12 1/8. We draw on that step and we just work our way down until we get to the other end. Once we get down here, which is the top of the step, we again lay the framing square in position and then we draw this line out like so, and then we flip the framing square around and just continue that line all the way down. We'll cut this portion out. This will be the top of the step, but we will be In our circumstance, placing a 1x here, so we cut out an additional 3/4 of an inch at the top. Of course, I just did this layout on the first one. Once I have that laid out and cut out, I use it as a template on the other two. It goes a lot faster. Plus, I know that they're all going to be absolutely identical. How you doing down there, Mark?
Good.
Okay, if you can just move it forward just a little bit.
All right. How's that?
Okay, Mark, I tell you what, lift your side up just a little, or lift your end up just a little bit. That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
How's that? Just a little bit more.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, let's lift it up now.
All right.
Okay.
How's
Is that
that?
tight?
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Hang on
There
to
you
that.
go.
You got
It's
it?
tight, yeah.
There we
Nice.
go. This one's just about ready.
Okay, I'll grab the next one then. Well, with our top section in place, we squared it up to the deck and then secured it with these 2x4s. With that in position, we were then able to frame up our landing. Well, the first thing we did was cut and assemble the double header joist for the upper and lower landings. Then we nailed the joist hangers on and attached the first set to the bottom of the stair stringer, supporting it with 2x6s. And keeping everything level, we attached the rim joist and the header joist on the other side.
Yeah.
After that, we finished framing the upper landing, including the inside joist.
Okay. Now because of the step down, we ripped these 2x rim joists to 7 inches to match the risers on the rest of the stairway. And we have to make sure that the stairs and the landing are perfectly positioned so we can get accurate measurements for the posts. And once this is square and level, we can go ahead and put the permanent posts in. Got it?
Yeah, just about here. Pass that
You
down.
want to put that up a little bit? And then we can...
Well, we have 2 of our posts in already. Now, each one of these are a different height. To determine the height, we measure from the top of the footing to the bottom of the rim joist. Okay, 106 3/4. Then we're notching the top to the post. We're notching out the 2 sides so that the outside of the post sits flush with the rim joist. And then we're just cutting the top of the post off 7 1/4 inches to time out with the top of the rim joist.
All set.
Well, treated lumber also comes in different grades. The higher grades have fewer knots, and then the lower grades, of course, have more knots. They look a little bit more rustic. Now, one strategy that you might want to use, okay, let me tell you what, Robin, let me get this up above here. One strategy you might want to do is to use some of the lower grades in the understructure where you don't notice it as much, for joists and posts like this. But then spend your dollars on higher grades in areas where you notice it, like the decking and the railing and the stairway. Also, when you're picking this stuff out, make sure that, let me move this back just a little bit. Make sure you check the warranty, because some are better than others.
Okay, needs to go back just a little bit. Where did we get this in? Now, once we get this where we want, where it looks relatively plumb by the eye, then we can go ahead and toenail it so it's in place, and then bring the level in. Plumb it, backfill it, and move on to the next one. Oh, I still gotta, I think we gotta
Did you
move
measure
this.
that right?
You measured it.
Oh, that's right. I guess I did measure it. Hey, could you hand me a couple more deck boards?
Oh, sure.
2 there should do it.
Okay.
Well, with our landing in, we were able to put our last set of stringers up. Those were a lot easier to do because we were able to work off the ground. Now the decking here on the landing is at a diagonal, just like our upper deck. Again, I'm just letting these deck boards run wild, and then I'll go back after the fact and cut them off again. Well, between the upper and lower deck, we have a basic box step. Kind of looks like a ladder framed up. Our joists are 16 inches on center, and there's a drop of 14 inches between the top deck and the bottom deck, so you take into consideration the 5.5 inches for our 2x6s, an inch and a half for the deck boards. That gives us 7 inches, which splits the 14 right in half. Now for the ends of these deck boards, I am drilling them just to make sure that they don't split out. Then I'll just screw the rest of the boards. Just get this flat bar in position. Get my screw in place, and then kind of force the board together.
Right up against the line on that side. Okay, well, we've started the posts for the railings. We're lag screwing them into the rim joist using 6-inch lag screws. Now we're going all the way through the first rim joist and most of the way into the second one, so they're pretty secure. We started by measuring off the posts using the layout on the plan. Then we drew a plumb line down from those marks to give us something to set the posts to. Mark the locations of the lag screws on the posts and pre-drilled for those. To make it easier, we cut a 2x4 at 34.5 inches, which is the height of the post above the deck. And then before, excuse me, Dean.
Oh, sorry.
And then before we put the posts in, we screwed the 2x4 onto the back of it, making sure that the top was flush. And that gives us a nice, simple guide, make sure we have the right height on the posts.
I might be wondering why we didn't notch these posts out so they sit in a little bit closer to the deck. Well, actually, we have a 2x8 band that's going to be wrapping around the deck. Here, I'll show you an idea what that's going to look like. So it's going to eat up 1.5 inches of the post anyway, so we really won't have that much of it showing. Now, 11 down, and will that make it 38, 39 to go?
Yeah, something like 38 or 39. Here, leg screws are already in.
Oh, you got them already?
Yeah.
Tell me when it's lined.
Lined up.
Okay. Right there, Phil? Now, we thought we would do something kind of interesting with the rail. Well, for one thing, we have what's called a leaf rail on the bottom. This is 3 inches off the deck. It has a wide open space, so it's a lot easier to sweep stuff off the deck as well as shovel snow. We're also alternating the heights of the spindles. It's a little bit more work this way, but I think the appearance is definitely worth it.
Now we pre-cut all the spindles since those are established dimensions, but since the distance between the posts vary, we're going to measure and cut the horizontal railings one section at a time. I laid out this piece of plywood with a couple of 2x2s as kind of a form to lay out each panel and to keep them square. Now the shorter spindles are end screwed through the rails, these rails right here. And then the longer spindles are going in between them using the spacer block as a guide and then screwed in flush with the bottom and the top rail. This one's done.
All right. Now this panel gets centered in between our 4x4 posts, which places the edges 1/4 inch from both sides. Okay, let me get this thing measured up here. Okay, 1/4 inch right there. That's looking pretty good. Then what we're doing is just pre-drilling these, putting a couple screws on both sides, and that does a pretty good job of securing it.
Get a measurement on this one. Let's see, 16 5/8. Now once all the panels are in, we can go back and put the cap rail on. And we've got it put on this section just temporarily. That's basically a 2x6 that's cut to length, and then we'll screw through the top and into each post. 16 5/8. Well, it took us a couple of days to finish off the deck railings and the privacy screen. And then we moved on to the stair railings. Now once we get that done, the majority of the deck will be built. So we ran out this morning, we got the patio furniture. We've only got a few nice days left this fall. We want to kick back and be able to enjoy the few that come along.
Well, now you can see what the privacy screening looks like. On the process of building this, we tried to use the same techniques as we used on the other railings. We pre-cut and then treated all the spindles, which were also 2 different lengths. But on this one, we notched out the posts for 2x4 rails and set the posts in place. Okay. We framed up the panel on the deck, test fitted it, and laid it back on the deck to attach all the spindles. With the panel assembled, we screwed it in place. Then we attached 2x2 rails along the top, and a cap rail above that.
Okay. Well, installing the stair railing has been a little trickier. We've got this side done so you can see what it looks like. Now, our code requires a stair railing height to be between 30 and 34 inches, and that's from the nosing. So to find the height of the posts, we ran a chalk line from the top step to the bottom at the proper height above the nosing, snapped it, and then cut them off at that height.
Now the form for this railing is a little different, but the process for putting it together is basically the same. Now these spindles go at a 30-degree angle, so we had to miter cut the ends to reflect that. Okay, Robin, I'm ready when you are.
All right, just a second.
Looks like this is going to sit all right. Now we don't have this railing quite finished yet. Code requires that you have a graspable handrail, so we're going to place one 1.5 inches underneath here, which will meet all the code height requirements, but I don't think we'll get around to that quite today yet.
Okay, if you want to hold it up there, I'll get this. Set?
Yep. Oh, let's hope so. Okay, I got it. All right. Now the last step here is to put the band board around the deck. Now for the band board, we're using a combination of 2x8s and 1x6s. The 2x8s are fitting between the posts, and then we rabbited a little groove underneath those to slide our 1x6 up. We've also notched out for the posts, and the combination of these two pieces will provide a very interesting way of finishing off the rim joist. The 1x6 will hang down by about 1 inch and cover up the rim joist. Okay, over just a little bit.
Well, if we butt the two together, the gap in between them will widen as the wood dries out. But by sliding the 1x6 up into the 2x8, we end up with a nice clean joint. And it's hard for water to get up in there.
Okay, I'm going to get a nail in here. Okay, you want to throw it in on your side?
Okay.
Well, that about wraps it up for today. We're not done yet, though. We still have to build some planters, some benches, and install a spa, but all that'll happen next time. Now the planters are made out of 2x2 frame along the top and bottom. Then to the side, I'm attaching 2x6s. Now to make sure that everything spaces out properly, I ripped a 2x6 here on the edge, and I put the cut side along the other 2x6 so the nice smooth factory edge is on the outside. Now once I get the base built, then I can take a couple more 2x6s like I've done over here, miter those, place that on the top, and then get a plastic container, place that inside, put the 2x6s on the top, and you won't even notice it.
Go on, should do it. Well, you might be wondering why this bottom section of stairs isn't finished yet. Well, this is going to be the finished height, and it's going to rest on a concrete walkway that's going to run from the back door and end at this landing. But we're going to have to take out this section of stairs, build the walkway, and then replace it. Anyway, my main project this afternoon is to get this bed planted. Now up here, we're going to put perennials, and then down on the lower tier, we're going to plant annuals and maybe some vegetables. And the first thing we need to do is to get the soil ready. I already ran the tiller once to mix it up and loosen the soil. Right now, I'm collecting soil samples to see what else we may need to add before planting anything. Now, the better your soil is, the healthier and prettier your plants are going to be. So you want the right amount of nutrients, the proper pH for the plants that you're going to be putting in, and you want it to be friable. Now, friable just means how crumbly it is. Now, to test your soil for friability, take a handful of slightly moist earth and squeeze it. Now, if it falls apart right away, it's too sandy. If it stays together in a clump, then it's got too much clay in it. A good sandy loam will just fall apart slowly, and this looks good. Sandy loam is the best type of soil for growing plants. It's made up of equal parts clay, silt, and sand. Ours is a little bit heavier because we have a fair amount of clay in our area, but we'll be able to change that by adding some amendments a little bit later. To test for pH and nutrients, I use a soil test kit. Well, I've gathered soil samples from different parts of the bed at a depth of 3 to 4 inches. Well, by mixing it up, I get a good average for the whole bed, and then I'll just test a small sample of it. Now, to test for nutrients, I'll add 5 parts of distilled water to this, shake it up, and let it settle. Good.
Well, we thought this would be a good spot for a little bench. We'll have our spa right over here, so it'll be a good spot to sit and chat with people while they're in the spa.
Oh, that looks nice.
Thanks. Now, the way that I built this thing was to, first of all, lay it out on the ground, build it with 2x4s, screwed it all together. Once that was done, then I screwed it to the posts and the railing. And now that that's done, I'm supporting the front of it with the 2x4 over here, and then 2 of these angled 2x4s on the side.
After the soil sample is mixed with distilled water and then settled, I fill the 3 comparators with that water, and each one gets their own colored capsule to test for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or potash. There we go. I'm going to shake them up real good and let them settle for about 10 minutes. Now, the nitrogen's already been sitting for a couple of minutes. The powder reacts to the nutrients in the soil sample and tints it. And by comparing its color to the reference guide, you can see how the soil ranks from depleted at the bottom, which is almost clear, to surplus at the top. This one looks like it's almost depleted. Now, the pH test is very similar, except for the soil is ranked on a range between 1 and 14. 7 is neutral, above 7 is alkaline, and below 7 is acid. Most plants like a more neutral soil, so between 6 and 8 is really the ideal range. But sometimes you'll get plants that like more acidic soil, like roses and raspberries. The test kit came with a little chart that lists the different plants and what pH level they like. Find the plants that you're growing and see if your soil needs to be adjusted or not. If you need to alter the pH, you should add lime to make it more alkaline or sulfur to make it more acidic. Anyway, if you're going to take your garden and lawn seriously, you need to know what your soil is like.
Well, I have about half the 2x2s installed now for our seat decking. I'm doing things a little differently. Where these boards meet in the center, rather than mitering each one of these 2x2s, instead I'm overlapping them. Gives us kind of a nice herringbone effect. I'm also recessing the 2x2s into the framing. This way the ends of the 2x2s are hidden. It's a little bit more of a finished look. And then I'm spreading these a little bit further apart. This is 7/16 of an inch. It allows for a little bit better water drainage.
Even though the results of the soil tests were okay, we're adding a little compost to give it a little boost for next spring.
Now, we got this from our local yard waste recycling center. This is a compost resulting from all the leaves and grass clippings picked up at our local curbside service. Now, the nice thing about this is that by applying this, we don't have to worry about putting any fertilizer down, because this has quite a few nutrients. And the thing about these nutrients is they're released slowly over time as it decomposes. So as these plants come out of dormancy next spring, there will be nutrients all ready for them. And not only does it supply nutrients, but compost like this will also loosen up real heavy soils.
Well, peat moss is another good soil amendment. It holds a lot of water and it lightens up heavy soils. Now, if your soil is too acidic, then add lime. If it's too alkaline, add sulfur. I'll tell you what, as soon as we're done with this, if you want to keep tilling, we'll bring those plants out.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just going to dump the rest of this
I'll take this with me.
Oh, I wonder how long this will take to fill up. What do you
Well,
think?
let's see, 400 gallons. The flow rate of the faucet, well, I'm not going to figure it out. You taking any bets?
A few hours at any rate. Well, once we had the spawn location, we had to take out that section of privacy fence in the back to get it up here. With it up on the deck, we had the electrician come over. He wired it so it's all ready to go when we get the water filled up. And said, do you mind hold on to this while I turn on the water? Get all over.
Well, spas on a deck like this are becoming increasingly popular, even in colder climates like ours. I think one reason is that they're so well insulated. The whole thing has got foam insulation all the way around, except for down here where the pumps and the filtration system are. That keeps the heat in. And then when it's not being used, this insulated cover goes down over the top. Now, an energy guide will show you approximately what it's going to cost to run this per month. So, at 7 cents per kilowatt hour, this one costs $14.85 per month. That's running the spa an average of 20 minutes every other day with an outside temperature of 68 degrees and the water temperature at 104 degrees.
How's it going?
Well, it's filling up.
Okay.
I'm going to go back on the deck lights.
All right. Well, this is the water purification system down here. Now, the water flows through here constantly and is purified with ozone, which is a process many times used to purify drinking water. As the water flows through there, it's also heated, so if the unit is able to maintain a constant water temperature.
These are the deck lights that we're using. They're low voltage, and each one is 7 watts. So they're not going to put out a lot of light, but it'll be enough to highlight the deck and to create a soft ambient light. They'll also light up the stairway enough to improve safety. Now, each one gets mounted onto the post just underneath the cap rail. But first, I'm drilling out this recess and cutting a channel in the top of the post to give us something to tuck these wires into. And that'll all be hidden once the lights are installed. Okay.
While I've been working on the wiring, I'm going to start making my connections at the transformer. Now, the first thing you want to do is make certain that the transformer you're installing can handle all the lights that you have on the deck. The best way to do that is to count the number of lights, add up the wattage. Now, we're working with a 500-watt transformer, which is enough for the lights that we're installing, plus it gives us a little future expansion capability. Now, transformers have different options. The simpler models simply have on-off switches, and then others will have photo eyes or timers. Now, this particular model has both a timer and a photo eye. That way, you can have the unit go on at dusk using the photo eye and then turn off at any point during the evening by programming the timer. Now, our cable runs out the bottom of the transformer, up the post, and then along the back side of the cap rail. Now, the cable comes out of the post in our first lighting position, and the cable continues down the line to our next light. And what I'll do is take one of the wires from the incoming cable and one of the wires from the outgoing cable, and I hook that up to one of the wires on the light. Get these things here together and get them twisted on. I'll use a wire nut to make our final connection. And because this is a low voltage system, we don't have to worry about putting in things like an electrical box, so the hookup goes much faster. Now, I'll hook the second wire to these two, and then once that's done, I'll tuck everything into this recess and screw the light onto the post.
Well, as far as the stairs go, the main purpose of these is to light up the steps. So we kept them low on the posts and ran the wires through the backside. Well, it looks like the spa's filling up pretty quick. That won't take long.
How you doing on the lighting?
We've got the channels cut and those recesses drilled, so I might as well help you out with these lights.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna go get some more.
Okay.
Well, Well, it turns out that we couldn't plant that bed until after the spa was in because we had to lift the spa up onto that side of the deck. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and finish it. Now the plants actually came weeks ago when we first started this project, and we couldn't plant some of them until we got the deck done. In order to keep the plants alive, we had to heel them in way over here out of the way and in partial shade. Now, heeling them in just means to plant them temporarily. Now you can dig a hole and bury them, or you can do like we did, and that's to put them on the ground and put dirt and mulch around them. Now we put them fairly close together because it's just to keep them from drying out like they would if they were in the container. Right now these are looking a little yellow and brown, but it's the end of the season and they're pretty much dormant. But they'll look good again next spring.
Fall is a great time to plant perennials. We're going to be planting shade-tolerant plants in this area. We get a little bit of sun in the morning, but then it's shady the rest of the day. Now we plant hydrangea right up against the air conditioning unit to help camouflage that. And then the rest of the plants, we have taller ones going in the back, and then they get a little bit shorter as we move toward the front. Now we're also putting down 3 to 4 inches of mulch. We got this from the same yard waste recycling center that we got our compost. Now this mulch will help keep moisture in around the plants, also keep temperature down around the roots, and we'll probably want to refresh this about every year or two.
These planter blocks are pretty interesting. They're hollow in the middle, so we're planting small perennials inside. Now, as they grow, they'll cascade down the front and soften up the hard edges of the retaining wall.
Now the first thing you want to do when you're working with edging is to make certain that it's going in the right position. Now probably the best way to handle this is take a length of hose like this or a rope, lay it out where you think that the correct position should be, take a look at it, and if everything seems to be all right, then you can move on. Next thing to do is to dig the trench for the edge. For that, we're using a square edge shovel. We place the shovel right inside the area of the hose. We rock the shovel back and forth to create a V, and we just move on down the line. Well, we've got some of the edging in. There isn't much to it. You just basically put it in the trench. Once you have it in position, you want to pound one of these stakes through at about a 45-degree angle. Now you pound these in at the ends and about every 10 feet.
Well, I'm splicing a couple of pieces together here. To do this, you slide a coupler into the ends of the two pieces. But one trick that we learned in the past is to notch out the rail, which is this tubular part, a couple of inches in on one piece. Then if your edging has this V thing on the bottom, you're going to have to take that off too. So when we put the two pieces together, the middle flat part is going to overlap each other. And then you can drive the stake through both pieces, which will strengthen the splice. Okay, you got the hammer?
For you.
Thanks.
Okay, once we get the edging in the trench, then we can backfill it. Now the top of the edging should be even with the top of grade. When I'm backfilling, I'm leaving it down just a little bit lower on this side because we want to have plenty of room for mulch on the plant side. And then on this side, we'll be laying in sod. Well, we're starting our second day on this walkway underneath the deck. Things are coming along pretty well. We want to get this done as soon as we can so we can finish off our last section of stairway coming down here. Now we poured a slab to give the stairway a little bit of additional support. Our walkway will run from this point, bottom of the step, up to our sliding glass door. Now originally there was a concrete slab right outside the door. We busted that up because it would have placed the walkway a little too high. Now we poured a second slab, so the combination of this slab and the height of the walkway will give us a nice little step down coming from the lower level. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and make some more muck.
All right, that sounds good.
I don't know if we're going to get the sod in here before winter sets in. We're fighting the rain. We have a tarp up on the deck. That's keeping water off the walkway. At least it's working so far.
Well, these are the forms that we're using to create our walkway. They're 2 feet by 2 feet, and they're pretty easy to use. You just set them in place and fill the cavities with concrete. The undersides are rounded to create the shape of the cobblestones. They're also shaped so that the sides match and interlock. As you move along, you just give it a quarter turn to vary the pattern of the stone. Well, this one is filled and it's been sitting a while, so the form is ready to come off. Now, these forms have a tendency to stick, so you want to wiggle it just a little bit before lifting it up, and then you want to lift it as straight as possible. There we go. Now it's coming. There's these little ears on the side of the form to help you lift it up. There we go.
Now we're using a concrete reinforced, or fiberglass reinforced concrete, I should say. It has little fiberglass particles in it. It makes it a little bit stronger. Once it sets up, it's a little bit more resistant to chipping from snow shovels and stuff like that. And we're coloring it using this concrete colorant. We can color 2 bags using a bottle this size. Although I have to admit, we're doing 5 bags. We're just to make the color a little bit less intense. So we put 1/5 of a bottle into here, and then we just, to make it mix a little bit better, put in some additional water. And we'll just keep feeding water into this until we get just the right consistency.
There we go.
Let me get this stuff out here. Well, I can't believe we got this much rain.
All right. Well, we didn't get the sod down this year because winter is on its way, and this mud is going to turn to ice soon. But we did get a lot done, and we managed to finish the deck, which adds a lot of outdoor living space to this home.
Also adds value. At the same time, you don't have to build this large a deck to do that. Just about any landscaping project will add value. All things like a smaller planting area, a flower bed, a walkway. But at any rate, hopefully you enjoyed this project, or we hope you enjoyed this project as much as we enjoyed doing it.
Thanks for watching. All right, we got a little more right in here.
We should probably get some of this lawn furniture out of here.
Hometime is made possible by Chevy Truck. Who brings you? Chevy full-size pickups. Today's big pickups for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Chevy S-Series pickups. Today's compact pickups that play as hard as they work. Chevy's Astro all-wheel drive. Today's mid-size van with standard 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. Chevy trucks. The most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. The National Hometime PBS series is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.